Hello and welcome to 52 Cakes. My name's Alexi and this is where I show you how to bake various things in a tiny kitchen. Now, after last time was very simple chocolate chip cookies, today I've stepped up the difficulty a fair bit and I'm making a lemon meringue pie. Now, it's a lot of different things, it's a lot of different kind of tricky things, but there's a lot of gaps where you can wash up, and if you do this right, it's not as tricky as it might first seem. So, firstly we want to add 175 grams or 6 ounces of flour with 100 grams or 4 ounces of cold butter cut up into pieces. We then want to add a tablespoon of icing sugar, an egg yolk, remembering to save the white because we need that later for the meringue, and a tablespoon of water. We then want to just rub that together with our hands. It'll take a while, 10-ish minutes, that's normally what I found. Once it's starting to bind together, we want to roll out on a floured surface. Now, this is quite a difficult process, made hard by the fact that I'm using gluten-free flour, so there's even less to bind it together, and it's not the most solid pastry in the world. I ended up removing the bottom of my pastry tin and rolling it out on that, just because every other method I used caused it to fall apart. Now, you don't really need to worry that much about it being perfect because it's a very rich dough, you don't have to worry about cracks either, and you just need to press it together once it's in the tin. Now, this is probably the most fiddly thing you've got because you want to make it as thin as possible, but once the tin is lined, you want to prick it with a fork and refrigerate it for an hour to overnight. So once it's cooled, you want to cover it with either foil or a baking sheet and then weigh it down with pastry weights or dry beans, or I use rice. And you want to bake it for 15 minutes at 200 degrees C, 390 Fahrenheit or gas mark 6, then remove the cover and bake for another 5. Now, while we're doing that, we want to make the filling. So to do that, we combine 2 tablespoons of cornflour, 100 grams or 4 ounces of sugar, the zest of 2 lemons, and 125 mils or 4 fluid ounces of lemon juice in a saucepan. Now you just mix that with a wooden spoon. We then want to add 200 mils or 7 fluid ounces of orange juice, and then we want to cook it over a medium heat until thickened. Now this takes a while and you want to keep stirring, apart from the occasional disappearance to go change what you're watching while you're doing this, which I do recommend because this is a very boring part. Like on my hob, which is terrible, this took me about 15 minutes and we have to do it again in a minute. So it does take a very long time to do this if you don't have a very good hob like me. So just keep stirring. Once it's thickened up, which again takes a while, quite dull in all fact, you want to add 85 grams or 3 ounces of butter. Stir that in until it's melted, and then we want to beat together 3 egg yolks and a whole egg, again saving the white for later for the meringue, and we want to stir that into the mix. Now you kind of just have to stir thoroughly because the egg won't entirely want to combine because it's still quite a hot mixture, but just stir it in, and then once that's done you want to return it to the heat and again keep stirring until it thickens up. Like I said, this is not a tricky thing, but it is a very slow and tedious thing. But once it starts feeling very combined, once you feel confident that it wouldn't seep through any cracks that have emerged in your pastry, that's essentially the point when it's thickened, right? So it took quite a while, but it reaches a point where you know that it's thickened. You can sort of leave it on its own a little bit if you're really getting impatient like I did. Just make sure you do keep stirring it as much as possible, and at some point it will be thickened. Now, once that's done, you want to beat 4 egg whites in a large bowl to soft peaks. Now, it depends on how light you like your meringue. I quite like a sort of very dense marshmallowy meringue. So I beat it to very soft peaks. You can beat it to almost hard peaks if you like a really light, really fluffy meringue. And then we want to add 100 grams or 4 ounces of sugar, 1 spoonful at a time, beating between each addition. Then, once we've done that, we want to add in 2 teaspoons of corn flour and beat that in again. And then we want to repeat the same process with another 100 grams or 4 ounces of sugar. Now, you want to just beat it in until it's combined. You don't want to overbeat it because then it will end up way too fluffy and you won't be able to do anything. But once the meringue mixture has finished, you want to reheat the filling if it has cooled, because this can take quite a while. And then you want to pour that into the crust. Then you want to add the meringue. Now you want to start on the edges and work inwards. Now, if you want the easier method, do it like this, make it very liquidy, because it will just pour in. If it's much thicker, then you want to spoon it in, but again, start on the edges, work centrally. You can't do it the other way around. It'll cause it to sink. Now, you want to bake that for 18 minutes at 180 degrees C, 350 Fahrenheit or gas mark 4. But you want to let it sit for another hour before eating so the entire thing sets and it doesn't dribble out. Yes, that is a lemon meringue pie. It's quite a complicated recipe. There's a lot of different steps. It is a gorgeous recipe. It's very lemony, it's very citrusy, it's sweet but without being overly sweet. It really is well balanced, and yeah, it is gorgeous. I do recommend trying this one if you have the time and space. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And I try to get these out weekly. I don't always succeed, but I do very much try. Yeah, thank you for watching, and stay happy, stay healthy, but most importantly, stay baking.